let's say they're not doing as well as they might like to with something, whether it's school or whether it's their sport or friendships or relationships, what are you going to do about it? Turn it back on them a little bit. Like, okay, your putting wasn't as great as you want it to be. What are you going to do about it? And kind of turn it back on them, whether they may not have an answer at that point, but maybe at some point they will have an answer. And that self-discovery, I think, helps not only build their skill, but also their confidence in themselves.
Welcome to The Golf Parent, where you get access to the best minds in junior golf.
Hi, Ryan. I'm excited to chat a little bit about golf and juniors and see how we can help people.
Love that. So, speaking of helping people, you got into the game early on, and off air, we're kind of talking about the fact that you had a great golf dad or sporting parent. Maybe let's start there. How did you get into the game of golf, and what did your dad do to kind of guide you to find a love of golf and to get good at it?
Yeah, well, I grew up in like a really small town in Western New York. I grew up in Geneva, New York. So I was certainly dealing with a lot of winters. And I also have a younger brother. I have a younger brother who's 4 years younger than I am. So when you're dealing with very much changing seasons during the winter, spring, summer, fall, we played all the sports. So, my high school, Geneva High School, I wasn't very good, but I played volleyball. I played a ton of tennis. Probably one of my poorer sports was skiing, but I loved it. So I was in the ski club. And obviously in the summer, we played a lot of golf. So, we just had tons of sports. And my brother was the same way. He played volleyball, basketball. He was on the tennis team. So you really kind of did it all. And, it was just fun. It was about being part of a team. And my father was just always like amazingly supportive. Like he owned a car dealership in Geneva, but for his college and his graduate degree, he actually had a PE major. So we were always like playing baseball in the backyard, throwing the football around. It was pretty much all out competition between my brother and I. So we just always, it was always about fun. It was about playing the sport of the season, being a good teammate, trying to get better. But I mean, the neat thing was our dad was always there. Like he never missed a game, hardly ever. Like my high school golf matches, he wasn't really even supposed to follow the matches around. They didn't allow parents to follow, but I knew he'd be kind of somewhere, kind of driving around the
Lurking in the
golf
woods
course.
somewhere watching.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like trying to get a look in. So, he was just always supportive of whatever my brother and I did. And what was always nice was like if I was ever having trouble with my golf swing, which was a lot, but I could call him, and even when he was at work, he would come and try to help me. And so he was just kind of always there. But he also let my brother and I kind of choose what we wanted to do. We were able to kind of choose our sports. So there was never any pressure from him to do what he thought we should do. It was always really our decision. So he was just kind of like a tremendous role model. And he was a really good golfer himself. He played the PGA Tour when you could follow it around and Monday qualify. So he spent a summer following the tour, and I think he qualified for like 7 out of 11 events. So, he was also quite a good golfer, and his father was a PGA professional in the Rochester area. So, he really had a golf background, but we were so multi-sport, and whatever sport we were playing, he was fully in.
I think where do you stand on this? I mean, it sounds like in your background that you played a lot of sports, and that seemed to translate into understanding teamwork and kind of the competitive aspect of sports. But there seems to be two kind of schools right now where there seems to be like hyper specialization early on, like really kind of choose the sport and go all in, get those 10,000 hours. Or the other side, which is just become as well-rounded as an athlete as possible and then kind of decide at a certain age. Where do you fall in those two camps?
Listen, I think
Based on your experience.
it's a really good question, and I certainly don't have all the answers, or if any of the answers. But I think it really depends on the child. I mean, some kids will just get really focused on one sport, and some kids just seem to kind of move around well with it. Like my son, his previous school, He's at high school now, but his previous school, the boys played all the sports. It was a small school. They went from basketball to soccer to lacrosse to tennis to golf, played them all. So my preference, just because it worked well for me, was play all the sports and then at some point let the child decide. Some of the experiences that I had, and I went to Furman University and played, 4 years of Division I golf there. I watched some of the young ladies who had a lot of stress and pressure to just be a golfer. They kind of burned out. So I think it really depends on the child. And I don't think one way is right or one way is wrong. But even just like preventing injury, if you're going to play the same sport over and over again, my concern for injury would be great. But I think you've got to kind of monitor it and then kind of listen to what that particular child wants. Everyone is certainly different.
Do we keep the fun in sports? I mean, the trend certainly seems to be everything's getting more serious, as we alluded to, hyper specialization earlier on. There's big money being thrown at the college level, university levels, and obviously the professional level. How do you keep that fun in the game, and not let that kind of pressure get to either yourself or to your child?
Gosh, that's another really good question. I mean, if it's not fun, it's not going to last anyway. I mean, and not to say like golf in particular doesn't make you crazy and frustrated and mad sometimes. It does. It can make you crazy. I get that. But if the overall isn't fun, then I think it's just certainly not going to last. And I know like for my son, when he's playing in tournaments, obviously it's a little more serious, but I just try to make sure that when it's not a tournament, he has time to play golf with his friends. Some of them are great golfers and some of them aren't as good. But like the other night, we went out and played a few holes and we brought our fishing poles, so like, and we didn't catch any fish, but we had a really good time. But it just can't be so much pressure. It can't be serious all the time. There's got to be times where if you hit a bad shot, it doesn't really matter. Just hit another one. So I think it's in the off time and the lesser competitive time, just sometimes just take it less serious. Or if you're not having fun, just go and do something else. There's plenty of other things to do for fun, I hope.
Definitely. I mean, like as you said, golf will beat you up. It can be very fun at times, and it can be very unfun at times. So to have some sort of balance, like fishing and the meditative act of fishing, that just sounds wonderful to kind of balance out the stresses. So that kind of makes sense. You've been teaching for a while, and you've taught a lot of different levels of golfer. What have you seen? Like if I was to give you 100 junior golfers, let's just say maybe at the age of 10 to 14, and you had them for a summer. And at the end of the summer, I was to ask, okay, which 10 of these junior golfers do you think have the best chance to move on to the next level or to have a chance at like a career? What would you be looking for at the end of that summer to kind of separate the, golfers like the elite from the rest of the pack?
Well, I'd love to start out with the fact that I just don't teach a ton of juniors. So first thing I would do is I would bring in some junior instructors that I really trust and bring them into that mix because I'm always happy to support, but I know it's definitely not my strength. But I always feel like the hard workers are going to be the ones that are going to probably work out in the long run. I mean, obviously you need reasonable technique, but I'll tell you another funny story about my son. So he was a baseball player for a lot of years, and I remember when he first started playing like I-9 sports down here in Florida, and he couldn't throw. I mean, my husband and I we're both pretty athletic, and we're looking at him going, well, this isn't looking so good. But eventually he ended up being a pitcher and a third baseman because throwing was his strength and also his kind of mental. He's a good, really great focuser. So I think it would be the kids that were really able to stay a little more focused and also work hard. If you're the kid that always wanting to go and have the snacks every 2 seconds or, you know, not really willing to work that hard. So I think I would look for that talent because I know like when I went to Furman, I wasn't really honestly, I wasn't that great when I got there, but I could always outwork everybody. And so I think that work ethic it would be something that I would really focus on.
I'm going to ask you a not even $1 million question. I'm going to say $1 billion question right now. How do we instill work ethic in our children in this day and age of all the distractions and all of the kind of instant gratification that's available to kids? How do we instill that work ethic, or can we?
Well, I just think it's setting good examples. I remember because I've been a working mom, the whole time that I've had my son. I remember reading something once that children of working parents had some type of advantage. I don't remember what it was, but I know like I get up and I go to work and I work pretty hard. And even when I'm at home, I have other responsibilities. I work for 8 a.m. golf and I love that. It's really interesting. We have a lot of different golf companies. So there's just always something to be done. So I think it's just setting really good examples. Your children are going to mimic you, so to me it's being a parent that works hard and then your child can see the advantage and the good things that come out of doing that. So I think it's just setting really good examples.
It's a great point. I mean, it's monkey see, monkey do. It seems to be a universal truth that there's no getting around that. That if you want your child to be a certain way, well, you have to embody that first because you could only top down kind of tell a child to do something so much. At the end of the day, they're watching more than they're
Right.
listening. So
Right. And then
you
and then
talk.
also I might turn it
No,
back
that's
on
okay.
them a little bit. Yeah, like if they're not, let's say they're not doing as well as they might like to with something, whether it's school or whether it's their sport or friendships or relationships, what are you going to do about it? Turn it back on them a little bit. Like, okay, your putting wasn't as great as you want it to be. What are you going to do about it? And kind of turn it back on them, whether they may not have an answer at that point, but maybe at some point they will have an answer. And that self-discovery, I think, helps not only build their skill, but also their confidence in themselves.
That ownership, what you're talking about, would go so far into because it almost plays into the hard work that you're talking about at the beginning. Because I mean, if you realize that you're responsible for, the quality of your friendships, the quality of your putting, whatever it might be, and you're a hard worker, I think that's a recipe for success.
Yeah.
You talked about focus. You talked about it seemed like you had an innate ability to focus when you were in college, and it sounds like your son also has that ability to focus, which is how he got better at throwing. Is that something that is like a trait that you've passed down, or is that something that can be learned or trained?
I don't know, maybe it's like a German thing. My brother has a son, Kyle, who is a really nice soccer player and he's played at a few different schools, but he he was playing, I think it was summer competitive soccer. So my son and I drove across Florida to go watch him play a game at IMG in Bradenton. And so we got up at the crack of dawn and we drove across and he was playing a soccer game and we hadn't seen him in a little while. And if he saw us, I don't know because he was so focused. Like he never even really looked at us. Like it was the most amazing thing to me. So I think some of it must be, hereditary because I have it. My dad certainly has it. My son has it. My nephew had it. So probably still has. Also think some of it is hereditary, but I also think some of it is learned. Like if you're a person that gets distracted a lot, if you just catch yourself and kind of make yourself come back, so I think it's both. I think you can kind of train yourself to be able to come back.
So focus seems to be hereditary, and it also seems like it's something that can be like I guess any trait that we have can be nurtured and like any muscle, use it or lose it. So it's one of those things that we can kind of train and get better at. Do you have like did you guys do anything for your son to help with the focus aspect or to help him to get to increase, for example, his ability to throw? Was that an intentional thing, or was that just something that he kind of realized that he needed to do and he did it himself?
He just figured it out. I mean, it probably just wasn't time for him to be good at throwing yet. I mean, it'll come in due time if it's meant to be. Like, he could have been a terrible thrower when we just kind of laugh. We're like, this is really something. But then we also watched him like in the same game where he couldn't throw. He would run and get the ball no matter where it was. So let's say hypothetically he was the first baseman. If the ball went to left field, he'd run to left field and go get the ball. He would go get the ball every single time. So, it was really quite funny and fun to watch, but it he wasn't meant to be good at it yet. It wasn't time. And eventually, like I said, he got to be really good. I'm actually a little surprised he doesn't still pitch because he was very good. But yeah, if it's meant to be, it'll be. Like you can't force this stuff. Not that hard work won't make a difference, but some God-given skills will be developed. And I can't sing. I am a terrible singer. God didn't give it to me as a gift. I'm sure you could say maybe I could learn, but I don't think so. So I think in due time it all works out.
Yeah, I'm also a horrible singer, but I'm definitely one to go to karaoke and still pretend like I'm a great singer. I feel like I'd make up for it with effort, or the theatrics of it as opposed to the actual skill. Because yeah, anybody that
You
knows me
must be
knows
better than
that
I am. Yeah, it's bad.
no, no, it's bad, but it's still fun, and that kind of goes back to the aspect of if it's fun, you can get better at it, and if it's not fun,
Right.
no matter
That's
how
true.
much pushing, you're not going to get better.
You're right.
You've written three really good books that are really kind of focused on helping women discover and get into the game of golf. So we've got The Woman's Guide to Golf, a handbook for beginners, The Woman's Guide to Consistent Golf, and The Woman's Guide to Lower Scores. What made you write these books?
So it's interesting because I don't know, a lot of what I've done professionally, I didn't really have the end goal in mind. I just kind of kept going. So I was working in North Carolina for a summer and I just started writing things down and I had notepads. I just kept writing and writing and writing and writing. And then I typed it all up and then I looked at it and I said, well, if this was going to be a book, what is it missing? And then I really had done the bulk of the work and I said, well, let me see what's even out there. And it was sadly obvious that there was just no instruction specific to women. And not that the technique doesn't travel both men and women, it certainly does. But as far as like a marketing aspect, it was really like a forgotten part of the market. There really even still there's so very little. So, kind of long story short, I had a friend of mine who knew somebody in the publishing business, and they were nice enough for me to go meet this very important person in the publishing business in a really nice restaurant in New York. And within about 5 minutes of me explaining what I wanted to do, he said that he would publish my first book, which that sounds great. And it was like really exciting. And I was young and I was trying to be calm about it. And then there was all kinds of issues with a co-author that sent me recipes instead of improved writing. And so fast forward a few years later, it's something that I'm very proud of. The Women's Guide to Golf, a handbook for beginners. I've sold more copies than I have friends, so that's always nice. And and it did well enough that they published two other books, which was great. And the publishing business has kind of changed now. It's a little tricky. They don't publish a lot of books, especially golf books. So I've evolved into a couple of videos that are on Amazon Prime. But, it's been really fun because every once in a while I'll get like an email or even like a handwritten note from somebody that found the book, in a drawer somewhere or at a library and it really helped them to play better. So the whole concept of being able to help somebody that I might never have met, like I love that because golf is hard. You can't fake golf. And if hopefully it being very understandable and clear and very kind of do this first and then this, if that's like helped people to play golf, I'm thrilled. I think it's great, and that's really motivating to me. The fact that people can get out, be with their family, be outside, the outside time and the relationships. It's really cool. So it's been really fun, and I have a couple of those letters still. They're pretty neat.
That's awesome. The fact that you can magnify yourself through writing, where it's there's only so many hours in a day, there's only so much time that you can spend directly working with somebody, but the idea that your ideas and concepts can kind of just get out there to the masses, um what a gift, and what a great way to just have a larger impact. So that's awesome. What would you say? What advice? Like my wife is a little intimidated by golf. She's not a golfer, never really swung a club. And there's a lot of moms that are listening to this right now as well. That maybe their son or daughter is very much so into golf, and they're thinking about getting involved as well, but they might be a little intimidated. What advice would you give to just that woman that's looking to golf, but maybe didn't grow up with it? Should they look at it? How should they start? In addition to getting your books, first of all, because I mean that's the handbook right there. But what kind of general advice would you give?
Oh gosh, that's another really good question. You're like loaded with good questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, listen, it's really easy to sit on the sideline and watch and not be involved. And that might seem safe and great for right now, but if you don't want to be left behind while your family goes to play golf, you you need to just put yourself out there. Like whether it's just like getting up and trying to swing a couple times. And if you miss, you miss. So what? Just put it on a low tee. But first of all, I'd say just do it. Just make yourself uncomfortable and try a few. And then I think it's great when parents and kids take lessons together. Like find even if your child's taking, like a lesson and you take 5 minutes of it or you involve yourself. I also think that setting a good example for your children. You don't want to be left behind. So kind of share lessons. And I think for women in particular, learning golf, if your grip isn't correct, if the way you hold the club isn't correct, the ball's not going to go straight. And number two, if your posture isn't correct, where you're bent from your hips or your arm and your hands can hang right below your shoulders, you will even hit the ball. So there's only so much success you can have trying to do it yourself. And that may not be a private lesson. That might be just joining a clinic, like a very safe group environment where it's probably a little more affordable, but at least you're going to learn enough technique to hit the ball and have some success. But, just like be really willing to kind of put yourself out there and be uncomfortable. And, you know, like when you can participate with your family and your kids and your girlfriends. Like I play a lot of charity events with my girlfriends and they're not great golfers. They're okay. We have a ball, it's, you know, don't sit still. Just go and just do it. Even if you feel stupid, everybody feels stupid at some point with golf.
You're bad until you're not, and that's for everybody. Like everybody's bad until all of a sudden you're not anymore. Um, Yesterday or 2 days ago, my mom joined me at the driving range with my son Chase, and she had never swung a golf club before, and she took one of my irons and she was hacking away at the ball and got really good. But she was using my tempered gold metal shafts, and so the equipment aspect of it obviously makes a difference. And there's different shafts, there's different equipment for juniors, for kids, as there is for players with a higher swing speed, women, etc. Maybe let's talk about the importance of getting properly fitted for equipment for both like kids and women.
Yeah, it's really tricky. And I don't even know how you can navigate that landscape without a professional's help. So, like junior clubs, like US Kids does a great job. It's color coded. Girls' colors are different than boys' colors. They're kind of cute and it kind of grows with you. So, my son played US Kids for a long time and they have different levels, from the beginner to the more advanced. And it's interesting with these kids at some point, whether it's a boy or a girl, they're going to grow into probably a ladies set, size wise, shaft wise, and if it's a boy, they're going to grow past that pretty quickly. And a lot of these young ladies today are pretty tall. So they're also kind of growing past standard ladies. These young women today, they generate speed that I never had. Even today, I wish I did. So, once you get into that point where, I've graduated past junior clubs and maybe they've graduated past even ladies clubs, that's a point where you probably need to start getting fit, and that can sound a little intimidating, but I always say like go and pay the fitting fee with like a brand agnostic fitter. Like I send a lot of my students to True Spec, and you're gonna be able to try every head and every shaft. Like, that's who fits my son and my husband and myself, because I can try everything. There's no question. And then you can choose whether to buy those clubs or not. That's your choice. But at least you kind of always know what fits you. Like, I know what fits me is pretty much men's standard. So once I get fit, other than wanting to try other manufacturers, I don't necessarily have to go get fit every time. But my son does, because he's growing and hitting it farther, and he's getting fit a lot. So I would say take that leap, but also, like, what's tricky for women with buying clubs, unless you have somebody helping you, is a lot of these pre-made sets. The set makeup doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, they'll go from a 4 hybrid, which doesn't really go very high, to a 3 wood, which is almost impossible to hit. So I just be a little careful with, like, the pre-made sets for women. They don't quite get the loft that needs to go kind of in the middle of the bag. And that's where another place where I think Ping is particularly strong. They seem to understand that we women need 5 hybrids and 9 woods and 7 woods so we can actually get the ball in the air.
And I mean, when you have a set of clubs, I mean, the average golfer uses a set of clubs for cases 10 years, if not more. I mean, it's not something that you need to, unless you're a little kid that's having growth spurts, you're not really changing the clubs too often. So it is something to maybe invest that little bit of extra, a couple $100 in, to make sure that you've got something that's fit to you and that you can enjoy for many years. It certainly seems like it's better to get it right off the bat, even if it's a little bit more expensive, than having to switch in a year or a couple of years just because you're missing some clubs or it's not quite the right fit. Would you agree with that? Or
Yeah, and you can buy them one at a time. I know it sounds kind of like weird, but if I know what fits me, let's say I get a new driver and I fall in love with this new driver, I don't have to buy the latest model. I can probably go back a year or so previous model, and it's probably pretty close. The manufacturers are probably like shooting me now. But, there are
I'll
ways
do that.
yeah, there are ways around having it be really expensive, and if you love your driver, then maybe you're adding a 7 wood, and then for your next birthday, maybe you're adding a 5 hybrid, and then maybe you're a set of irons. So, I'd rather see fewer clubs and good clubs in somebody's bag than, stressing yourself out trying to, break the bank.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Earlier in the conversation, you mentioned your work with 8 a.m. Golf. What's 8 a.m. Golf, and what do you do with them?
So I consult for 8 a.m. Golf, and 8 a.m. Golf is a parent company of a lot of different golf companies. So it started out with 2 or 3 different companies. We have Golf Logics, which is a golf app. We have an investment with a Nicholas design company. And my person that I work with, Mr. Howard Milstein, was thinking about buying Mura. So we own the Mura rights for everywhere except for Japan, but we've continued to buy other golf companies, and we also own Golf Magazine and golf.com. So I spend some of my time consulting for the different companies. I spent a lot of time with Golf Logics. I spent a lot of time with Golf Magazine and golf.com. But we have kind of a tremendous group of golf companies. And what's really nice working with the Milstein family, and they're a real estate banking family in New York, is they're also extremely philanthropic. So they're very generous. So while the companies do well and we like that they do make money, but there's also a real opportunity to do the right things. Like Mr. Milstein has made sizable donations to junior golf. So it's fun to work with the different companies. I've learned a lot in the process. And it's also nice to really feel like, we can, make a difference in the golfing world. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot.
It's awesome. If if you can kind of maybe leave some parting wisdom with, like, if you could give some advice to junior golfers that are coming up right now who are trying to, take their golf game to the next level, to make it into maybe a Division 1 school, or those junior golfers that are already playing at a high level collegiately and they're trying to make it pro, what advice would you give to them to kind of give them the best chance to succeed?
Well, I've got a front row seat into some very successful golfers. So, there's the level of junior golf down here in Palm Beach County is just bar none. I mean, these kids are already committed to D1 schools like as sophomores, juniors. It's really unbelievable. So, you know, if your technique is there and it's pretty good and you score well, then just keep putting yourself in the right situations and do the best you can do and um compete at the highest level that you can. But if you're not quite there, I would say find the best instructor in your area that you can get to. And it's not always that easy. It's not always that easy to get with the best instructor, and it can be a little expensive, but if your technique isn't pretty darn sound, it's pretty hard to just kind of survive the pressure. And there's just going to be so many kids that are so good. I mean, I told my son, we were warming up for a tournament and I was watching these kids at the ball. I said, you're probably never going to out ball strike these kids. You can hit it as well as they do, but you're not going to hit it better because they just pure the ball and they crush the ball. But your short game, I'm like, you can be a better short game player than they can, hypothetically. So, it's do the best you can, but I also think be a good student and have a plan B. And, if you don't make it on tour, getting good grades and completing your school is really important. 'Cause some kid could be the greatest kid and on the highest trajectory and get injured, so have a plan B. And I also think when you have a plan B, it takes a little more pressure off plan A.
That's great advice. What would you, same question for the parents then, like what would you advise for a parent who's trying to support their child in the best way that they know how, through their journey of junior golf?
Yeah, I would say I work on that every day. I am probably the definition of the no pressure parent because I I I probably make myself son a little crazy. I'm like, he hits a shot and he doesn't think it's good enough, and I'll look at him and say GE, and he's like, I know, mom, good enough. So I mean, the less pressure you can put on these kids, the better. They're probably inducing enough pressure themselves. And I've watched parents put so much pressure on the kids that it really can sour the relationship a little bit. So I would say parent first. And one of the things that I've learned to do, I'm really good at it now, is I keep my mouth shut and I am the greatest poker face you have ever seen on the golf course. Because I follow my son a lot. I try to help him and his playing partners find golf balls if they get a little bit awry. And if he's hit it the best shot, I react a little bit. If he hits the worst shot, I don't react at all. So, like, your kids are gonna pick up on your body language in 2 seconds. If they miss a shot and they see you react, they're gonna internalize that. So, I would say parent way first, and then so listen to what they need for their golf, but, don't add any pressure. The golf's hard enough. There's enough pressure. It's self-induced.
Was that hard to to work on the poker face?
No, because I'm pretty good at it, but, like, I think my son would like me to be a little more excited when he hits a really good shot, but I was always taught to just kinda be calm. So he played a tournament last week, and he started out a little rough, but he finished pretty good. So and I wasn't allowed to watch, so I kind of did what my father did, and I snuck up on the last hole, and he birdied the last hole, and I clapped quite loudly, and I think he was pretty happy about that. But, you know, um, yeah, it's just you have to do it. Don't react to their bad shots. You can react a little bit to their good shots, but boy, oh boy, they didn't do it on purpose. And golf's hard. They're gonna hit plenty of bad shots.
Your advice to your son when it came to the fact that, like, hey, you may not be able to outdrive these kids, you may not be able to out ball strike them, but you certainly can have a superior short game for those kids right now, because there's such an emphasis right now on speed and power and, crush the ball and, just basically rip it and then go find it. For those kids that maybe don't have those physical gifts, what can they do to basically have an edge on the competition that they may not have when it comes to height or speed? How can they stay competitive?
Well, these boys go through this growth spurt at some point, so my son actually hits it pretty far. He doesn't hit it as far as some of the other kids his age and size, but I mean, when he hits it, he can hit it 300. So it's not like he's hitting it short. But, sometimes, it takes a little bit longer time to get taller and stronger, and that'll come in due time, and there's really not much they can really do about it, until they do kind of go through that growth spurt. But I'm a big fan of the stack speed training. Two guys that I think are very smart, Marty Jertson from Ping and Sasha McKenzie, who's a biomechanist up in Nova Scotia. These guys are smart and they developed this speed trainer. I do it. I'm just trying to not get outdriven by more than 100 yards with my son. So I'm trying not to hit it shorter. But there are certainly things that you can do. But I mean, some of these kids that are smaller, they just have these ridiculous short games and they just get it around the green somewhere and, try to get up and down. But kind of once again, kind of like with my son in throwing, when they're meant to get bigger and grow and be a little bit stronger, they'll get there. But I mean, some of the tour players like Justin Thomas, I played a tournament where he was there and he's not any bigger than I am and I'm not that big.
So yeah, I mean, it's certainly there's other skills that can be developed, and one of them, it certainly seems like on the tour level, it's the mental side of the game. It's having a very developed mental side. What have you seen, and what tips would you give to kind of help create the mentality that you need to be successful on the golf course?
Well, I think you and I talked about my friend Kathy Hartwood. There's mental coaches out there and that's what she's doing. And she's really great at it. Just kind of putting it in perspective, just so that you're not attaching your self-worth to your score or your game. I mean, being kind of a well-rounded person who does things other than golf so that when you don't have a great day that, you're not kind of knocking your self-confidence. So, that's where I think kind of having other things that you do is really important. So if you need to take a little break from golf and do something else for a little bit, that's doesn't feel like the end of the world. It's okay. There's these kids need to go and they need to study too. They need to get good grades.
Yeah, being well rounded and you know, golf is we're talking off air that golf is this beautiful vehicle to just learn about life, learn about yourself, learn about what it takes to be able to focus and all the downstream effects that being good at golf has just later in life. Forget the business and the networking and all that side of it, but just understanding yourself. I always say that if you want to learn about a person, either get drunk with them. I'm not advocating that, but you'll learn a lot about somebody based on if you're drinking with them, and or go golfing with them because you can really get an inner glimpse into how their self talk and just how they can handle pressure. Like it's crazy what gets revealed on the golf course.
It's amazing what a personality magnifier it is. You know exactly what you have when you're playing golf with somebody, especially if they're not playing well. You learn a lot.
Personality magnifier. Well said. Never heard that before, but yeah, truth. Kellie, you're full of truths here. You're becoming prolific on Instagram. You've got your 3 wonderful books. If a parent's listening to this right now and they would love to either work directly with you in person or through the app or all that, what's the best way for people to reach you, find you, and to work with you?
Yeah, I'm pretty findable these days. I've hired a new person to help me with my social media. So my Instagram, Kellie Stenzel Golf, has really been kind of fun to see. Once again, kind of people seeing very simple, understandable videos that, maybe they're too basic, but that's okay. I'll take that MO that, what's the difference between a chip and a pitch? I think that's very confusing. The announcers on TV don't even get it right. But I spend most of my year in the Palm Beach area. So if they want to come to me through my website, kelliestenzelgolf.com. And then I also do some online coaching with the Skillest app. So that's I guess what really I like is helping people that maybe they're not right in front of me. I've had a lot of fun like helping people with their golf swings, kind of around the world. I have a woman in Canada who I help her with her golf swing on Skillest and it's really fun. And I've tried to make it really affordable. I don't even know how much it is now. I just do it for fun. So those are probably the 3 easiest ways to get in touch. And if I can't help them, I will help find somebody that does.
Yeah, wonderful. Any last kind of parting advice for the listeners and this beautiful game of golf?
I golf, it's such a great sport. To me, it's just about the quality time. it is really, really fun to hit a good shot. And if, like I said, if your setup's good, you've got half a chance. But, you know, it's such a lifelong sport. And the people that you'll meet and the places you get to go, it's just get in there and try it. And then for the kids out there, just do your best. And that's all you can ever do. And wherever it ends up, just no regrets, do your best, and that will carry you a long way in life.
Wonderful words of wisdom. Kelly, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all that you do. And yeah, I look forward to having another conversation very shortly.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun to chat a little golf. I appreciate it.